Fife. Now, tonight we've got 30 minutes, courtesy of Ian Russell and the live stream, and I want to talk about why I'm asking people in Mid-Scotland Fife to give me a second vote, your peach ballot paper vote. Now, we were going to do tonight as an interactive session, but we're operating on a skeleton crew, which is basically Ian Russell on his own, who's doing everything. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask, guys, if you have any questions, any comments, you can text me or phone me. If you can see the number here, it's 07971 805 163. Any questions or queries, phone me. We'll have a wee bit for questions near the end. If it's absolutely desperate, you can phone me halfway through. No prank calls, please. So, solidarity. We're a small party. We're an anti-austerity party. We're an anti-oppression party. And we're pro-independence. So, I've got 3 topics I want to speak about tonight, if we have time. As long as I don't go off topic. I see my phone buzzing here. That's okay, nobody's getting in touch yet. 3 topics. 1 is anti-austerity, 2 is the Scottish service tax, and 3 is anti-oppression. And what I want to do right at the end is tie these 3 topics together. So first of all, anti-austerity. We are told that we have to, we're all in it together, and we all have to suffer cuts to public services. There's job losses in councils across Scotland, and the pay cuts. So, we're all in it together. And yet, last year, when David Cameron and George Osborne were telling us this, the week after, George Osborne said, we're all in it together, public services are going to have to take a pay cut. The week after, MPs gave themselves a 10% pay rise, a 10% pay rise. Also, according to the Financial Times, not the Morning Star, not some left-wing publication, according to the Financial Times and the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, the differential between the average skilled wage in the UK and the CEO's wage, the Chief Executive's wage, is 183. Your average Chief Executive in a private company earns 183 times what the average skilled worker earns. Now, to me, when people are saying there's not enough money to go round, that doesn't add up for me. MPs gave themselves a 10% pay rise, and I read recently they've given themselves another pay rise. There's a differential of 183 between the CEO and the average worker. I think there's plenty enough money to go round. Now, austerity, I like to tell a wee story that illustrates the absurdity of austerity. What kicked it all off? Well, it was a banking crisis. And here's how the story goes. And if you try to write a movie with a script like this, it'll be kicked out as being completely unlikely and unrealistic. Here's how the story goes. The banks, a few years ago, decided to take a gamble and indulge in risky behaviour. And they started gambling all our money by lending to people irresponsibly, people who weren't going to be able to pay the money back. They lent out all this money, and guess what? The gamble went wrong. So they lost all their money. Except it wasn't their money. It was our money. It was your money. It was my money. Because it was the money that we put in the current accounts and savings accounts and we put into banks. They gambled with this money and they lost it. So they're running to the government and they said, oh, please sir, we've lost all of our money, meaning all of our money. What can we do? And the government said, we will bail you out. So the government bailed out the banks. But where did the government get the money to bail out the banks? That's right, from you and me, from us. So we bailed out the banks. The banks lost our money, and then we replaced our money with more of our money from our pocket. That's not the end of the story. As a result of the banking crisis, we now have who pays for austerity? The working class. We pay for it. So we paid for austerity 3 times. 3 times. I'm told there's not enough money to go around. The next story about austerity is a story about Amazon. Now I live in Fife, not far from the Amazon big distribution centre in Dunfermline. When Amazon were looking for some place to build the biggest distribution centre in Scotland, the main distribution centre, all the councils across the land, they were trying to outdo each other with incentives to lure Amazon to come to Fife or to go to Clackmannan, to go to Stirling or whatever. Well, Fife won, if you can call it winning. Fife said, we'll put on a big spread for you, we'll build the factory for you free of charge, you won't regret coming to Fife. The Scottish Government paid £1.8 million to Amazon to come to Fife to build their factory. The built distribution warehouse, and we thought to ourselves, well, never mind, because we'll get that money back surely. The amount of money that Amazon made, when we start getting the corporation tax, we'll be rolling in, we'll have lots of public money. But of course the problem is, Google don't pay tax. Google do all their accounting through Ireland and through Luxembourg and Liechtenstein or wherever it is, but the result is they don't pay corporation tax. So we get nothing from that. And by the way, they recently paid £130 million voluntarily of tax. They should have been paying billions, not millions. So then we said to ourselves, well, never mind, because surely all these people who are employed, they'll be paying income tax, right? So we'll get some receipts of income tax. We're bound to get our money back somehow that we paid. Well, no, because unfortunately Amazon pays most of its staff minimum wage or below minimum wage. So there's precious little income tax coming in. So the public sector is subsidising the private sector. We are subsidising Amazon. They're stealing money from us by not paying their taxes. And every time that we buy something from Amazon, we're aiding and abetting, we're complicit with it. Now my point here with this is that think of all the billions that Amazon owes us, me, you, and everybody here. And now think as well about, you've got Amazon, you've got Google, you've got Starbucks, you've got Boots, you've got Caffè Nero, you've got Vodafone, all the culprits. And this information is in the public domain. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But these companies don't just owe us pennies, they owe us billions. Billions. So for the pathetic little millions that we're having to save, which is costing people's jobs and people's lives, we could be getting 10, 100,000 times that amount of money from the big companies if they paid their way. And that's why I say austerity is a con. Now, solidarity. Solidarity is committed to making the rich poorer and the poor richer. That's what we mean when we say we're an anti-austerity party. Okay? And I want to talk to you about the Scottish service tax now. I want to give you a concrete example about how we plan to redistribute wealth, the essence of socialism. The essence of socialism being that old quote by Karl Marx, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. Well, if we're looking for who is able to pay, it's the rich. And if we're looking to who has need, it's the poor, it's the working class. So come on to the Scottish service tax. Tommy Sheridan in 2006 as a private member's bill. It was voted down, unfortunately, by the SNP. The following year, the SNP introduced a bill which was remarkably similar in many ways, in almost every way. It didn't get passed either. The Scottish service tax is an income-based alternative to the council tax. Now, the council tax at the moment is regressive. I was in Perth last night speaking in Perth. And in Perth it's a massive castle. And Anne Gloag, Brian Souter's sister, lives in this enormous castle. The owners of Stagecoach. Now I know for a fact that the council tax band of that mansion is band H, because that's as high as it goes, that's the top band. Okay? Now I live in a wee two-bedroom band A flat. And I can tell you that the differential between what I pay in my council tax and what Anne Gloag pays in her council tax is a magical number 3. So band A council tax in Perth and Kinross, £772. And there's a figure written down here. Band H, 2,316. That's 3 times. But the difference in income between me and Anne Gloag is not 3 times. She doesn't only make 3 times what I make, she makes thousands more than I make. This is where the Scottish service tax comes in. It's based on income, not on your property value. The Scottish service tax has bands or scales, if you like, a little bit like the council tax. But the difference is it's based on your income. So on your first £14,000, you pay nothing. Between £14,000 and £42,000, you pay 4%. So if you will pay 4% on £1,000 above 14,000, so that's going to be £40. So if you, like me, live in a Band A flat at the moment, or a Band A accommodation at the moment, you're paying £772, or a very similar sum in Fife or Sterling or whatever. They differ slightly. You're going to go from paying £772 to paying £40 if you make £15,000 a year. Okay? Now, I've got some example figures here about hypothetical households and how much people make and how much they would pay compared to what they're paying with the council tax. I want to show you how the Scottish service tax saves the working class money, you pay less, and takes much more money from the wealthy. So here's a couple of examples. I've got them written down here. Unfortunately, I can't memorise them, so I've got them written down. Here's a household. There's 2 people, 2 earners in this household. One makes £20,000 a year, one makes 15. They're in a Band A flat, they're paying £772 a year. Under the Scottish service tax, that household will pay a total of £280. That's the whole household together, both earners together. A household with 2 pensioners in it. Well, I can tell you now, they're exempt. The pensioners will not be paying the Scottish service tax. But even when you start earning a wee bit more, even when you start earning the average skilled wage of a skilled worker in Scotland, or even a bit more, you still don't get hammered. You don't get hammered for getting on a bit. We're after the wealthy. We're not after the working class who've got a bit of skill and have managed to sell their labour for a decent price. So, there's a couple here. One makes £30,000 and one makes £35,000. £65,000. Because they're making this amount of money, they live in a Band F accommodation, so they're paying £1,672 at the moment, right now. Under the Scottish service tax, they would pay £1,400. So even when you're earning a decent salary, a dignified wage, you're still paying less. So I wondered to myself, at what point, where's a cut-off point where you start paying more with the Scottish service tax? Well, if you live in a Band A accommodation, you would need to earn £33,000 before you'd even pay a penny more. £33,000. So that's not bad. If you live in a Band B accommodation, you would have to be earning £42,735 before you paid any more than you paying the council tax. However, if you really are wealthy, and for years and years you've been underpaying your tax with the council tax system, admittedly through no fault of your own, then the Scottish service tax is not such good news for you. If you have a household with 2 people making £72,000 each, then that's a pretty wealthy household. At the moment you're living in a Band H house, it's probably safe to assume you're paying £2,316 in council tax. Under the Scottish service tax, you're going to pay £5,680 each, which is £11,360 from a combined income of £144,000. So those people who do make a lot of money, they should be a wee bit anxious. But here's the thing. Some political parties indulge in a process called triangulation, where what they try to do is be all things to all men. The Labour Party will do this, they'll try to appeal to the working class by doing nothing to help the trade unions, but they'll also appeal to the middle classes and they'll appeal to the ruling classes. They basically want everybody, as many as they can get. So their policies try to be a catch-all, a cover-all. We've got a simpler philosophy. We're a party for the working class. We don't care about the ruling classes, we don't care about the wealthy. We care about inequality. There is far too much money in the hands of the 1% and nowhere near enough in the hands of the 99%. That's us. So, that's the Scottish service tax, and that's an example of how we plan to redistribute wealth. I hear my phone buzzing. I'm going to see if I've got any questions here. Nothing yet. It's buzzing because it's buzzing. Perfectly fine. I'm going to move on to anti-oppression, and I'm going to see how we tie these two previous topics together, anti-austerity and the Scottish. Solidarity is an anti-oppression party. We stand against all types of prejudice, and bigotry. We stand against homophobia, racism, Islamophobia. We say that all people are equal regardless of their sexuality, their gender, their freedom of religious belief, whatever it might be, ability, disability, whether you're a refugee, whether you're born in Liberton Dams, it doesn't matter. We're all equal. The thing about phobias and bigotry and prejudices is that these are a tool that the ruling class uses to get the working class squabbling amongst themselves. So the ruling classes create the shortages down here amongst us, the working classes. They create the shortages. There has never been full employment in Britain, and under capitalism there never will be. Because it suits the ruling classes to have a shortage of labour for two reasons. The first reason is, if you've got a shortage of labour, then everybody is scrabbling to get a job and they're going to sell their labour for a lower price because you've got a surplus of unemployed people and too few jobs. That drives down the cost of labour, the cost of work, the cost of employing someone. But the second reason is, what also happens is when you create shortages, then inevitably the working class look for each other to blame. And the ruling classes in the media and the papers like The Sun and these despicable things, the News of the World and the tabloid papers, even the so-called respectable broadsheets, they feed on this. And they feed the stories about these refugees are coming to steal our jobs. Migrants are coming to steal our jobs. There's not enough money to go around. How could we possibly welcome this country? There's not enough to go around. And what that does is it sets a white working class man against a black working class man. Or they'll tell you, all these people who say they've got disabilities, they're fit to work, they could easily work. What's wrong with that person? And so Atos steps in, demonising and chasing people who are disabled or ill and in no position to go and get a job, and they chase them and they give them benefit sanctions. And then worry them and harass them into an early grave. And then we read about it in the press. Oh, it would be better if all these disabled people would go and work. The stories don't add up. If we're saying there's not enough jobs to go round, and these refugees who are coming here, and by the way, it's a puny, tiny amount of refugees that we're welcoming. If there's not enough jobs to go round, why are we running around chasing people into work? Those two stories don't add up. You could read in the same newspaper a story about perhaps on page 5, a big factory or a big supermarket, and my goodness, there's 100 people for every one job. 100 people for every job. They're all clamouring for the job. Turn the newspaper over a few pages and you read the story about work-shy benefit scroungers and people who don't want to work. Well, it seems to me, if you've got 100 people chasing every job, then there's no need to be going around chasing people to get off unemployment, to get off ESA or whatever. There's no need. The whole point of this demonisation of the unemployed is just another example of when I speak about what we oppose with anti-oppression. It's another example of trying to get the working class to focus on blaming each other instead of uniting and looking up there, because they think they're above us, looking up there at the super rich, at the politicians, at the wealthy, and saying, wait a minute, we know what the problem is. The Scottish man here, the Scottish man, the asylum seeker, the refugee, the person who's disabled, the person who's gay, the person who's transgender, we're all united in saying, we know what the problem is, we know who the culprit is. It's you, it's the ruling class, and we know who your accomplices are. It's the politicians. It's the politicians who are in the pockets of the big corporations. That's what the problem is. So friends, that's the whole essence of anti-oppression. It's taking away the focus from us blaming each other and focusing our rage and our indignation on the ruling classes. Now folks, I've got a question here. It's from a Kevin Moody. And Kevin is asking, I think just asking me really to clarify. I was speaking about the Scottish service tax, and I was saying the Scottish service tax only targets the wealthy. It doesn't target the working class. At what point do you actually start paying more than you do with your council tax? So I can only go back to my figures that I have here. I'm hoping to come up with some kind of nifty online calculator for this, but for the moment you'll have to do it in my pen and ink, because my printer's broken, my pen and ink scribbled notes. So Kevin, like I said earlier on, brother, if you make, depending where you live, Kevin, if you live in a Band A, and it says here is in Glen Office, you're in Fife, the same as me, if you live in a Band A accommodation, until you're earning £33,000, you don't have to worry about it, okay? But you see, the Scottish service tax is based on ability to pay. It may sound like the example I gave earlier on, the wealthy are paying a lot, they can afford to pay a lot, it's down to proportion. So if you're in a Band A, don't worry until you earn £33,000. Kevin, I don't know where you live. If you live in a Band B accommodation, you can earn £42,000 to worry. And each person in the house. Okay, so if one of you is earning just below the threshold, zero, nothing. Okay. Now, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't speak finally, and I'm really pleased I've covered my 3 topics. I'm going to move on to independence, Indy Ref 2. Solidarity is committed to holding or campaigning for a second independence referendum within 3 months of any MSP getting a seat in the Scottish Parliament after May. Within 3 months, we will introduce an Indy Ref 2 bill for a second independence referendum to take place by 2018. The SNP tell us 2 things. They tell us, look, all these problems that we've got, they're not our fault. We can fix them all, but we can only fix them when we get independence. And so we say, oh really, gosh. And then we say, oh, well, referendum. And then they say, well, we're not sure, you see, you'll have to wait. That's not good enough. The Scottish people voted in the referendum in May 2014, I agree, 2015, so they voted no to independence. I accept that, we accept that in September. The following May though, Scotland had changed its mind. We changed our mind, and we demonstrated that by sending 56 independence MPs to London. Scotland has changed its mind, it's time for a change. And we changed our mind because of the I hesitate to say lies, but we were lied to, so I'll say lies. Because of the lies we were told to. The vow by Brown and Clegg and all these other people. So it's very simple. Any Solidarity MSP who's elected will introduce a bill within for a second Indy Ref by 2018. Now why do we want independence? Is it because we think we're better than the English, or the Welsh, or the Northern Irish, or the French, or the Spanish? No. Scotland has consistently voted to the left of the rest of the UK. For as long as I remember, we've always voted to the left. But friends, this is more to do with our experience in Scotland, the way that we've been treated and mistreated by Westminster over the years. This is not because Scottish people are inherently different from English people. My mother is English, my little brother is English, my sister's Maltese, my dad was in the Navy, we moved around all over the place. And I've lived in many different countries as a boy. And I can tell you, people are people wherever you go. We want independence from the rest of the UK because we think we're better than the rest of the UK. The rest of the UK because it's going to be better for Scotland, because we vote consistently for left-wing governments in Scotland and we don't get them because of the arithmetic of democracy. We're only about 10% of the population of the UK. Our dream, our goal, is we'll get independence in Scotland, We'll introduce socialism in Scotland, we'll start practicing socialism in Scotland. We'll lead the rest of the UK and the rest of Europe by example. So then, when we read in the newspapers, we will no longer be reading about whinging jocks complaining. We won't be talking about it. We'll be doing it. We'll be showing the rest of the UK. And trust me, brothers and sisters and friends, the rest of the UK is going to follow our lead sooner or later, and I think it won't take long. This is a zeitgeist. This is the mood of the moment. Look at Greece, Portugal, Spain. The socialism is rising up in all these countries. This is the new reality. This is what people want. Those stories I told before about the lies that were told and the scams and the tricks that the ruling classes pull on us, they don't just happen here. They happen in Spain and Portugal and Greece and all these places as well. We are getting wise. We are realising Scotland wants independence. Scotland wants socialism. And Solidarity is committed to that one single aim. Independence in order to introduce socialism, in order to introduce social justice and equality. That's the purpose. So friends, I don't know if you want me to ramble on for another few minutes, but I've come to the natural end of what I'm saying. I've nothing more to say. So unless my phone goes on this number here, 07971805163, then I'm done here and I'm going to say very much. Please vote for Solidarity on your peach ballot paper on May the 5th. You can't vote for us on the lilac paper, we're only on the one paper. You probably already know, and you're sick of hearing about the DeHont arithmetic system, the voting system that means that voting SNP 1 and 2 could actually harm the SNP because the second vote, because I'll have so many constituency MSPs, the second vote will be divided by up to 10, making second votes to the SNP almost worthless. So please vote for an independence party on your first lilac ballot paper and vote for Solidarity, pro-independence, pro-socialism party on your peach ballot paper. Thank you friends, I'm Bill Mair, Solidarity, candidate for Mid-Scotland and Fife.